All right, I think we're live and just waiting for a few people to join. Okay, everyone can hear me okay? Jackie, can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, I think we'll kick off. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th ROC at Work webinar, and thank you for joining. My name is Glenn Grossick. I'm the Managing Director for HSMAI Southeast Asia, and I'm emceeing this webinar today. So in today's session, we've got the wonderful Dr. Basak. She's a Professor of Revenue Management from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. If we don't just break for a moment, Sonia, would you mind changing the slide, please? Okay, and Basak will take us through a journey through her team's academic research based on a hotelier's take on attribute-based pricing, a very interesting topic for all of us. Now, fortunately, Basak has just recovered from COVID, so we are thankful she could be here today and joining the panel. But as a replacement to save her voice for the Q&A session afterwards, we'll play her live presentation she did in ROC in Singapore as a replacement, and then she'll join the Q&A session live after the presentation. So we have quite a panel joining us here today at last minute, some really great guest panelists. Sonia, would you mind changing the slide, please? Okay, first of all, I'd like to welcome Jackie Douglas. She's the HSMAI president, and she's also the global chair for HSMAI Academy. We have Sonia Singh, who's controlling our presentation. She's our managing director for HSMAI India. Right, and we also have from the hotelier side, we have Brian Bailey, VP of Revenue and Distribution for Minor Hotels, and Nicholas Durand, the VP of Revenue and Partnership for S Hotels and Resorts. So okay, it's quite a panel, Dr. Basak, so be ready for some questions and quizzing after the presentation. Now, before we jump into all things attribute-based pricing related, we're going to cover a little bit about what is ROC at Work and HSMAI in general. So firstly, what is ROC? Sonia, would you mind changing the slide? So ROC is an acronym for Revenue Optimization Conference, and this is HSMAI's global annual global conference that we roll out in 5 continents every year. So we roll it out in APAC, the Americas, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. And basically, obviously it was revenue optimization, but now it's really merging into commercial. So you never know, it could be called something else next year. Okay, this year was kicked off. Sonia, would you mind changing the slide, please? Okay, this year was kicked off by Asia Pacific, our first one out of 5 to go around the world. And it was about 150 delegates gathered together in Singapore at Marina Bay Sands. And it was a wonderful event, and everyone was very excited because this was probably the first event for 90% of the attendees, including, the C-suite level and the chiefs of marketing and a number of hotel groups. So basically everyone there was the first time they'd all been in a room with each other for quite a number of years. So you can imagine it was quite exciting. Sonia, would you mind changing the slide, please? Okay, so what we had is, obviously we had around about 14 presentations at ROC in Singapore. And, what we always planned was to take those live sessions and make it virtual to reach a much wider audience. So originally it was going to be a 1-day virtual event, but we thought, well, we can't really take everyone out of the office for such a long time. So we thought about a lunchtime webinar session. And as such, ROC at Work was born, and here we are. Sonia, would you mind changing the slide, please? So in total, out of the 14 sessions, we chose 6 that we thought were suitable for a webinar format. Now, the good thing is if you've missed any of these 6, because we're right at the end at the attribute-based pricing, the last of 6, but if you missed any, they're all available on demand as a Zoom recording on the Hey Summit platform. And this will be the Hey Summit where you received the email when you registered for this event. You just go back to your email and you'll find the details of how to find the recordings. So if any of those pique your interest out of those previous 6 and you want to go back, it's very easy on demand to watch it anytime you like. Sonia, change slide, please. And you'll also find the recordings for all of ROC at Singapore live events on the same hsmai.roc Hey Summit platform. And you can see there were another 8 really dynamic sessions that were held. But a lot of these, some of these were panels on automation, on owners' expectations, F&B distribution by Sherry Kimes. There was a number of really fantastic presentations. But again, you can see all of these on demand on Hayes Summit. Okay, so what I'm going to do for a few slides is hand over to Jackie Douglas, our president, and she's just going to give a little bit of an update, a little bit of background on HSMAI.
Okay, hi everybody. So HSMAI obviously stands for Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International. There's 4 regions around the globe, Americas, Europe, Asia Pac and Middle East. And we have a big chapter in Brazil now that is officially part of the Americas, but we're down in that area as well. Sonia, if you can keep going as I talk. The association focuses on revenue, sales and marketing disciplines in hotels. The association, if you think about your local hotel association, the difference with HSMAI is that we run more like a professional society. So individuals are members and we're more about helping you develop your career, learn more, share information, create best practices for those disciplines and that sort of thing. So we sort of have programs and education for people from all of those levels, from property level up to the masters like we've got on the call today. There's lots of benefits from joining. We do a lot of industry events. There's a lot of marketing intelligence. As I said, best practice. If you don't know who we are, you may know us from the CRME, the certifications that we've been running for more than 20 years for revenue management and digital marketing.
Sonia?
Sonia? One of the really popular programs that we have, especially popular in Asia Pacific, is sort of a online program called the Certificate in Revenue Management, and that's for people with less than about 3 years experience in the revenue role, and it really ramps up their skills so that they can be more useful faster to the hotel, which has kind of become really important with the short staffing that we're seeing at the moment. So if you're moving anyone into a revenue role that hasn't been there before, this is a great program you can do. And that big news, am I handing you back to you, Glenn?
Yes, yeah, you can hand back. So thank you very much, Jackie.
Your area.
Yeah, okay. So next events, we're just going to run through very briefly what's coming up in the near future. So our next in-person event, our next big one is our Digital Marketing Conference 2020-22. And that will be held in Phuket, Thailand. And the original aspect of this conference is where, for the first time, we're partnering with the Phuket Hotels Association. So we're expecting around about 150 to 200 senior hotel executives to come together in obviously beautiful Phuket. And I think we'll all be staying on for the long weekend after that, Jackie, as we mentioned. Now that will comprise of a half-day forum. It starts at 2 o'clock, finishes at 6:30, and it's free for members. Okay, so please find more, you can find out more about that online. And directly following that is going to be our 2-day revenue and digital training. And that's going to be held in the same location, same hotel. So if you join us for the marketing conference, you can stay on for the next 2 days and do some certifications in revenue and digital. So again, you can find that on our website. Sonia? Okay, now from ROC, the last section of ROC that we'll move through will be the masterclasses. We had 3 on the second day at ROC in Singapore, and these again will be delivered in webinar formats, and there's a certificate of completion and a small cost to enter. So if you're looking at, you're interested in total revenue forecasting, you have 2 extreme experts in the field delivering that webinar, followed by a masterclass in building your commercial acumen. So it's a very well-received session in Singapore. And another well-received session was the using content to maximize online conversion with, again, a real panel of experts that will be delivering that webinar. So keep those dates in mind, and they're very easy to join as a webinar. And now next full webinar series after the completion of ROC at Work is going to be the sourcing trends and the future of MICE. with Cvent, and this is going to be a really interesting. Obviously, now what the buzz is meetings and events are coming back, and they're starting to say I love the term revenge travel. That's also coming back. So this is going to be really interesting in terms of looking at where the business is coming from now and in the future and how to plan for it. So if you can catch any of those webinars in your particular area, they'll be very helpful to your planning for 2023. Okay, so we're about to kick into the webinar with Dr. Basak. So if you have any questions, please don't worry about the raise the hand, just use the Q&A function. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, and we see it come up straight away, and we'll put that in the queue and we'll address those questions in the Q&A session after the event. So enough from me and about HSMAI and what's coming up, and let's move back into to let Dr. Basak take us on a journey through a hotel's take on attribute-based pricing. Okay, Sonia, ready to roll. Volume, Sonia, can you? Your volume button's out to the right side there of your...
No, just unmute yourself, Sonia.
All I see is a hand sitting there waiting to decide what's going on.
That's it. She's unmuted now.
Yes, okay. So sorry. Did anybody want anything else? I paused it.
Yeah, start again so that we can hear you now. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our still 1 week quarantine requirement. So joining me online today, there is Rene. So Rene is the research assistant of this study. She finished up her master's degree in Hong Kong, and she's flying to Cornell for her PhD.
Sonia, I think I can't hear anything.
Oh, it's playing.
Sonia, don't mute yourself because we're listening to your computer. Okay, so don't put yourself on mute.
Okay, let's see now.
Okay, start again.
Sorry.
Sorry.
There is Rene. So Rene is the research assistant of this study. She finished up her master's degree in Hong Kong, and she's flying to Cornell for her PhD next month. So I have her for 2 more weeks. So before jumping into the presentation, I want to just make 2 comments about Detlef's presentation. I was in Second Life, and we actually had our school in Second Life, and I have conducted some research in Second Life and published that. So imagine how old I am, Detlef. So, and when you talked about metaverse, I thought about my 11-year-old daughter spending 80% of her free time playing Roblox. And actually, she prefers seeing her friends in a Roblox environment rather than in person. So I think they are the correct generation targets in the context of this business money making. And she actually makes me buy her things on Roblox more than in person. So I know my time is limited, so let me jump into my topic. So today, I would like to discuss hoteliers' take on attribute-based pricing. So this study is part of a big research project that I am working with my collaborator in the United States, and with Rene as research assistant. We have been working on this project for more than 1 year, and we would like to share with you some of the preliminary findings of this research. So before we jump into that, I know there are about 100 people sitting in that room right now. We have a quick poll with 3 questions. It is completely anonymous, so we just want to get a feeling in terms of what your thoughts are on attribute-based pricing. So please scan the QR code. Here's the first question. Do you foresee attribute-based pricing or selling to be used by hoteliers in the next 3 years? So I'll wait for a minute. We have 11 respondents so far. Okay, so it looks positive. Very few no's. Majority of the room seems optimistic. Yes, and some say it has already been used. Good, then this is the right place for this presentation. Let's move on to the second question. What type of hotel customers do you think would like, would appreciate, or would prefer attribute-based pricing? This came up in our interviews with the industry experts. They basically told us not everybody will be into attribute-based pricing. So we are doing a word cloud here, just input the types of customers that you think would like this type of pricing. So leisure and family are everyone, okay, are the okay, most repeated word is leisure, cost conscious, budget travelers, couples, families, millennials. So we see a trend, definitely leisure, price sensitive, thrifty, younger customers, long stay customers, budget customers. Thank you. What type of hotels should not implement attribute-based pricing? And for this question, you can choose more than one. We have economy all the way up to luxury, or you may choose everybody can implement it. Again, when we had this discussion with the industry experts, we got mixed perspective on this question as well. Some were saying this seems suitable for maybe economy to upscale, but maybe it is more difficult for luxury hotels to justify attribute-based pricing. But we see here the viewpoints are mixed. So more than half of the room believes that everybody can implement it, but 31% thinks, okay, it's down to 29%. Maybe it is not appropriate for luxury hotels. Okay, so with that, let's move on to our topic. I have to stop the poll because I am limited with time as well. So this is the research team, and this project is supported by our University School's Hospitality and Tourism Research Center. So before we jump into the study itself, I would like to show you how we operationalize traditional room pricing in comparison to attribute-based pricing. So we did this study in two different ways. We talked to hoteliers. So today, this is the majority of the part I'm going to present hoteliers' take on attribute-based pricing. But then we went to customers as well. We asked customers' perspectives on attribute-based pricing too. So to do that, we had to show them what attribute-based pricing looks like and how it is different from traditional room pricing. So this is what we did. Here's an example, and the target market for this customer study was also leisure customers, just like majority of you selected in the question previously. So this is for a hotel in Hong Kong for a stay in April in Hong Kong dollars for a superior room, one night stay. So we have room details, room size, room view, bed type, breakfast, and a late checkout option. This is 1,624 Hong Kong dollars. So this is traditional room pricing. So we presented attribute-based pricing in two different ways to customers. One is attribute-based pricing without prices. So here we have the same room attributes as the traditional pricing, but we give them options and we present them with the selected options. So then there are 3 room sizes. We choose the middle option. We choose mountain view. We choose queen bed type, breakfast included, late checkout provided at 3. We don't show them attribute prices. We just give them a total price, same $1,624. And the third one is the attribute-based pricing with prices. So you might ask, when you look at the prices here, where do these prices come from? We actually have done a 3-stage study. First, we identify typical 4-star hotel targeting leisure customers, what would be the most important attributes that they could price. We identified these top 5 attributes, and then we did a second study. We actually did discrete choice modeling. So this is a very popular marketing type of modeling where we could compute people's willingness to pay. So we have done the second study and we have calculated the participants' willingness to pay. And these dollars, Hong Kong dollars attached to the attributes are coming from this computation. So now they're able to see for a 35 square meter room, what is the price for room view, mountain view specifically, how much they are paying, a queen bed price, breakfast price for 2, and then late checkout as well. And then prices are added up together to reach the total price of 1,624 Hong Kong dollars. So in our customer perception study, so this is how we present the traditional room pricing in comparison to attribute-based pricing with or without prices. So this is how we visualize attribute-based pricing in the hotel industry, and this is how we presented it in our study. So I will come back to the preliminary results of customer perception study at the end. But now I would like to jump back into the major part I am going to present today, hoteliers' take on attribute-based pricing. So for this study, we talked to 19 hotel industry executives and 4 academic experts. Their domains include revenue management, IT, hotel operations, sales, and marketing, both at the corporate and the property level, with average work experience of 23 years, and they are located in China, Hong Kong, Germany, India, Singapore, Thailand, and United States. And average interview time was about 66 minutes. The questions that we asked to the interviewees were guided by the core revenue management processes. The charts here you see. So this is, this is sort of, what we follow, the steps we follow when we implement revenue management. So these were, again, the guideline that we followed for this study. So we have a lot of findings, but we want to share a couple here that we think would be interesting to you, and it will be guided by the attribute-based selling process. So attribute-based selling is a pricing strategy we believe should be part of overall business strategy, and before anything can be done, there is a lot of back-end and front-end system preparation is needed, as well as organizational preparation. We need to teach everybody that's involved in this process what is attribute-based pricing, how it is going to change the way that we price the rooms, the way we present these rooms to the customers. So it is a completely different way of selling rooms in comparison to traditional room pricing. And in business analysis, we need to identify target customers. And I heard some talk, I have been listening to presentations since 12:30 and identifying, like target customers, our direct customers actually in this context are the most important ones to do attribute-based selling. So identifying target customers, mapping the hotel attributes, and among these hotel attributes, verifying valuable and sellable attributes is also very important. Then moving on to pricing strategy, I will go through these steps a little bit more in detail, so I am just reading them through right now. We need to price the attributes, then price the rooms, and also design attribute-based pricing booking process. And when we implement attribute-based pricing and traditional room pricing at the same time, we need to build up 2 different inventory sets. This is actually what was recommended by the industry experts. So they advise us to have two inventory sets at the same time, but then they will be synchronized in real time, talking to each other. So I would like to talk a little bit more detail about these four main steps. So let's take a look at system preparation. So front-end booking websites and applications should be built up for attribute-based shopping by hotel themselves or third-party technology companies. Attributes should be built onto the booking engine, and attribute-based shopping algorithm should be developed so that customers can review and choose the preferred attributes with or without price tags during the booking process. So I am not very big on technology, so I'm just reading the notes directly from our respondents. And for backend systems, PMS, CRS, and RMS should be updated, and attribute-based pricing, reservations, and inventory control system should be created to support the implementation of attribute-based pricing. So replacing the room type as the most basic unit, attributes should be coded into these systems. And front-end and back-end systems should be well connected and communicate with each other seamlessly in real time. And also to go a little bit deeper on system preparation and back-end systems. So normally in research studies, we do not disclose our participants, but we had somebody very knowledgeable to teach us how the back-end systems work. And this is Dr. Vinod from USA. He's actually very, very knowledgeable about pricing and inventory control in the context of attribute-based pricing. And here I put a reference to his presentation, Hotel Retailing with Attribute-Based Pricing and Inventory Control. So he recommended that hotels have a chief commander backend system, which stores availability, rate, and inventory of the attributes, and processes, this system processes reservations from different channels and calculates the room price and does the room assignment and suggestion. And in terms of where this system should be placed, it can be either part of a PMS. So these our participants, experts called enhanced property management system, where attribute-based pricing is embedded in this system, or there can be a completely independent attribute-based system. Then Dr. Vinod told us he patented a system that he developed. He calls this apricot. It is called attribute-based pricing and reservation inventory control technology system. And this system stores availability, rate, and inventory, receives shopping, booking, cancel requests, and processes these requests. And this system can analyze inventory to determine availability of a room that satisfies guest attribute requests, calculate the rate, and decide whether to accept or decline the booking, and then sends this decision to PMS or different distribution channel. And furthermore, it can do room assignment and suggestion as well. And in terms of attribute selection, so this is a very important step for hotels, and there was consensus among our participants that there are no sort of streamlined or one set of attributes that are valid for all hotels. This depends on hotel location, hotel price value relationship, name, target customers. What is valuable for one customer segment wouldn't be valuable for the other. I don't want to make fun of Hong Kong hoteliers, but the example I use in my classroom is the room view pricing in Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, we have city view room, mountain view room, and harbor view room. And harbor view rooms are the most expensive rooms in terms of hotel view. But right now we are in summer in Hong Kong, and it is typhoon season. It rains all the time, and you cannot see anything out of the window. So, but hotels continue pricing harbor view rooms higher than other view rooms. It doesn't make sense, right? The value is not there during this period. So the experts that we have talked to, and also I believe in this myself as well, we should be very careful after we map out total hotel attributes to select valuable and sellable attributes. So valuable attributes are from customers, our target customers' perspective. Are they valuable? Are the customers willing to pay for these attributes? Because there are some attributes people like to have, but don't necessarily want to pay, right? So we have to differentiate those. And in terms of sellable attributes, so sellable attributes are the attributes that can be priced and sold and also has profitability. So these attributes should be reasonable value-added, unique, and sensory attributes, or should be common attributes. They're classified different types. So our experts recommended that each hotel does the attribute mapping and then selecting valuable and sellable attributes, and among those, select the attributes that they think suit them best. This can be done at the property level. And then comes the pricing of the attributes. So to set the initial prices, most probably there is not so much data to look at, right? For the first time when you implement attribute-based pricing, you need to decide how to price. And just like we have done in our study, hotels can use stated choice experiments through discrete choice modeling or conjoint analysis to identify what the starting price should be for the attributes. And another way, this is not actually preferred way, but you can look at some of your room pricing today. For example, the extra customers pay for harbor view in comparison to city view room. The difference would be the attributes for the harbor view room, attribute price for the harbor view room. So you need to set the initial prices and start. And once you have data about customer preferences, some demand and supply relationship, what are the attributes that are requested most, or whether your competitors implement the same pricing policy or not, so you can adjust these prices. And also automated pricing by AI and machine learning, highly recommended. And the most advanced step of attribute-based pricing is the dynamic pricing, where price of the attribute change according to the demand. So this is stated as the most advanced form of attribute-based pricing. So we could present pricing of the rooms. We could do the pricing of the rooms in two different ways. First way is having specific prices for each attribute. You add them up and you will reach total room rate. This is what we have done in our customer perception study. And two other things were recommended by the industry experts. First one is to have a base price. So think of base price as right to say rate. So this can be maybe rate for the most basic room category, right to say rate. And then you would price all other attributes relative to this base price, and those are added together to get a total room rate. And the third method recommended by hoteliers were having a base price and then have your room attributes not priced. For example, room view, away from the elevator on a high floor. These are requests, but we don't show the customers the price. There's a price, but we don't show it to them. And then they make their selection. Then you can have some add-on attributes like late checkout or breakfast or limousine from the airport. So these options, customers can see the prices and they are doing that. So this was the third option that was recommended by the experts. So how can we then design the booking process? So you have to make a decision whether to have a base price or not to start with. The second decision is about the number of attributes. So if you have too many attributes, it can be too time consuming for the customer, or it can be confusing as well. So you have to decide how many attributes you will have and how you are going to categorize them. And also need to make a decision whether you would like to add price tag or not to these attributes. And this one was very controversial in our study. Some experts were very adamant saying that you require price transparency. People have to know how much they are paying for. So this is important to include price tags. And some others said that no, we shouldn't do that. For example, especially for luxury type of hotels where it's not so elegant for that type of customer segments to show the prices one by one. So this is a choice that hotel has to make. And then once the customer completes their selection of the attributes, then you can show them the available rooms that satisfy all the requested attributes that match best to customers' requirements. And here also, as an advanced stage, personalization was recommended. Once you have the customer data, then you can show them some personalized offers based on their historical behavior. So in terms of inventory management, there should be two sets of inventory, as I have mentioned before. One is traditional room type based inventory set, other one is attribute based inventory set, and they should be synchronized. And I know my time is finished, but give me 2 minutes to share with you the findings, preliminary findings of my research on customers' take on attribute-based pricing. So in this study, we have done a survey using 6 different scenarios. So for pricing strategy, we have 3 pricing strategies that you have seen: traditional room pricing, attribute-based pricing with prices, and attribute-based pricing without prices. And we presented them with 2 number of attributes. Either they sold 2 attributes or 5 attributes for a room. So we call this experimental design. So there are 6 scenarios, 3 by 2, 6 scenarios, and each respondent saw only 1 scenario out of 6. So our respondents for this study come from mainland China, 420 of them, 18 years old or above. Age distribution follows China national census, equal distribution between men and women, and they have stayed in an upscale hotel room for leisure travel in the past, and they have traveled to Hong Kong in the past 5 years. So this is what they have seen. This is traditional room price stage, 2 versus 5 attributes. This is attribute-based pricing without prices, 2 versus 5 attributes. This is attribute-based pricing with prices, 2 versus 5 attributes. So here are the preliminary findings. We looked at 2 main variables: willingness to book and perceived price complexity. So for both 2 and 5 attributes, we see willingness to book is highest for attribute-based pricing with prices. So this was surprising to us. The numbers are not much different. This is measured on a 1 to 7 Likert point scale. So they are overall high, but it is highest for attribute-based pricing with prices. And the second variable is perceived price complexity. Again, 1 to 7 scale. We see here, it's a little bit hard to read, but purple is attribute-based pricing with prices, and this has the lowest perceived price complexity. So, you know, in research, not everything works perfect. We were thinking 2 to 5 attributes was good enough to do this test, but we realized 5 attributes. Look at 2 to 5 attributes. Perceptions didn't differ at all, almost. So now we are doing another follow-up study where we are going to have more than 10 attributes, and we want to see whether perceptions change, whether, you know, when we add more and more attributes to their choice sets. So that will bring me to the end of my presentation, and here are the takeaways. Get your front and back end systems ready. There is no one-fits-all attribute list for hotels. Choose the attributes that your customers value, and again, you know, do some background work and to calculate their willingness to pay. Create an attribute-based inventory list and make the booking process user-friendly. So that will be it for today. Thank you very much for listening. We are in the process of producing a paper out of this. So if you are interested in this study, please contact me, and we will be very happy with you to share more detailed research findings. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sonia, if you close down the screen share. Okay, can everyone hear me again? No, go backwards, not forwards, Sonia. In any case, Jackie, can you hear me okay? Okay, all right, so great. So what we'll do, thank you very much for that, Dr. Basak. I think I've seen that maybe 3 or 4 times now, and each time I personally find something else, another angle on it. And this time for me, it was the customer's perception of like how are they, you know, from a customer or a guest booking perspective, how will they compare, one hotel versus another if it's all based on these variable attributes, and some hotels have 3 attributes, some have 10. But I guess you answered in saying there'll probably be a base rate. But then how does a luxury hotel advertise a base rate without those built-in attributes? It's a very interesting topic, but I'm not going to steal the spotlight. I think maybe first we can hand it over to Brian, because I know he had a few questions previously, but I wonder if they've changed a little bit in seeing it another time. Brian, do you have any questions for Basak?
Thanks, Glenn. Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Basak, thank you very much for the presentation. It's fascinating. One of my questions, in my organization, we're very fiscally responsible, as we like to say. So I find the analysis around customers' willingness to book as interesting. Obviously, that should lead to conversion, which should give us revenue. What I haven't understood so far around the opportunity is the type of investment in technology that's required. We're talking multiple databases, we're talking complex methods of databasing or repositories for attributes, all of which comes at a cost. So in this organization, we would have to understand that the incremental revenue from attribute-based pricing and the profit from that incremental revenue would more than offset the investment cost to bring the opportunity to life. Has any of your research delved that far? I mean, obviously customer perceptions is one. Incremental revenue would be a great start so that we understand that. And obviously it all comes down to whether or not there's incremental profit and return on investment.
Thank you. This is a very good question, very difficult question at the same time. In this research itself, we didn't go that far, but I would like to tell you what I think of it myself. My background actually is not in revenue management, it's in finance. I studied finance, my degree is finance, and I spent half of my life doing feasibility studies, just to show, something is worth doing or not. And I think when it comes to technology, my experience with the industry is it is very difficult to convince owners, specifically owners, to invest in technology, because they want to see when they are going to get their investment back, right? And sooner the better for them. So I think from an implementation point of view, this is a very strategic decision, and I do not see short-term return on this, and I see a lot of work going into it at the same time. I think the first question an organization should ask is this for us? I don't think attribute-based pricing is for everyone. From preliminary findings of my research, it looks like it is more suitable for not so loyal, but very price sensitive, younger type of customer. It seems that way. So, and for the same reason, implementation of attribute-based pricing for 5-star or luxury type of hotels were questioned, and the recommendation to implement attribute-based pricing without the actual prices was actually for this particular segment of the hotel industry. But looking at the opposite side, when we are looking at price sensitive, younger type of customers, price transparency, value for money was extremely important. So I think just look at, for example, some of the airlines that implement attribute-based pricing. They are mostly economy type of airlines, right? And before the pandemic, they were quite successful. But the thing is, it came to a point where their pricing didn't make sense anymore. You had to pay for every little thing, and it became annoying to certain target customers, even to the target customers of those airlines. So I think there should be a fine line, right? When you map those attributes, do not price every single thing and push them out for sales, right? You need to really identify what type of attributes your customers would value. But even this, even all of this process, is strategic. It takes very long time, and I don't honestly think that return is short term. So it is from that perspective, it is, I think, still very difficult to convince senior management and ownership to do this. But when we look at, for example, some of big hotel companies, what they are doing, they started testing this very, very slowly. For example, what if we do attribute-based pricing for bed type, or we do attribute-based pricing for room view? How would our customers perceive this? So start with baby steps to see if this fits for you. What is the customer reaction? Because customer reaction also, right, may not be the same in Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Thailand. Looking at your source markets, right, different customers might react differently. But I think the most important benefit of attribute-based pricing is maybe winning customers back to your direct channel, right?
Yeah.
Because they can choose exactly what they want, and they will not choose what they don't want and what they don't value. But then the inventory management becomes very complex as well, because they might value something, but it might be sold out, right? So I think there are many complications ahead in terms of implementation of this, but there are a couple of good examples all around the world. Mostly I have seen in Europe and United States that started implementing attribute-based pricing, but mostly their target market are price-sensitive leisure customers, and level of the hotels are around 3 to 4 star hotels. So I don't know to what extent that answers your question.
I think that answers the question very well. And in this organization, the brands that we have are generally in the upper upscale and luxury area. And I was letting Glenn know prior to this panel that I maintain healthy skepticism around ABP for our particular business, given that we're in a space where customers expect, you know, a high level of touch and contribution from the rates that they pay, and therefore not necessarily. You said it yourself, Professor, that it was low-cost carriers that implemented menu-based pricing initially. I haven't seen menu-based pricing on airlines being used in business class, for example. So I think there are analogies to draw there. And another comment I'd say, I think a challenge with testing it is the effort required and manual effort that's required, given just looking at your experiment and the ways of displaying various options to a customer, that would have to be done manually without the investment in technology to do the pricing or the maintenance of the inventoried attributes, for example. So I think I'll be watching closely and would love to see any more research that comes out, particularly around incremental revenue, and then you know, expanding that through to the profit on that incremental revenue, knowing what gross profit margins are, because that's what has to fund the investment to exploit the opportunity.
And also to add up to that, I think just like, you know, the classical way we do revenue management is focusing on the price rather than like reducing the cost. If you price better, you know, the end game profitability will be higher. I think the same applies for attributes as well. Most critical decision is selecting the attributes and pricing the attributes, right? You have to price it right, and this is quite difficult as well. We cannot just, you know, simply ask the customers, how much are you willing to pay for this attribute, right? It is not going to work, and it cannot be based on cost as well. So I think, like in our research as well, calculating willingness to pay was the most difficult step. And this changes over time, might change for different type of customers, different source markets. So I think that also brings another level of complexity. But if it can be done well, I think it can work. But it should be tested nevertheless.
Yeah, I think it's surgical in the approach to customer types and to price classes. That's where I'd love to follow through and see how this develops over time. I think you touched on a lot of points there. I think the research, without saying anything contentious, the research in willingness to pay, is there a chance that that is geographically skewed as well to a particular audience that have very specific needs when they travel as well? So I'm wondering if it's representative.
Absolutely. So because we are located in Hong Kong, you know, this study itself was sponsored by our school. We use Hong Kong as the test market and mainland Chinese travelers. The actual intention of the research was also to include international travelers to Hong Kong, but we couldn't write anything realistic, you know. It was, we collected this data last year and it was such a bad time. And this is a bad time also to do this study as well. But hopefully after, you know, 1 or 2 years after everything picks up, we can test it with a wider range of customers to get a more representative perspective. You are right, it is very restrictive to only mainland Chinese travelers to Hong Kong.
I better give somebody else a chance to speak, Glenn.
Yes.
I have
That's
some,
okay.
I have some experience with actually testing this stuff out, interestingly, because I come from a OTA background, right, a travel tech background, and when I was at Voyages, we had 5 luxury resorts, which were sort of $1,000 to $10,000 a night resorts, and what we tried, which you know you now call attribute pricing, was offering them other packages that went with their room. And so what we found was that the conversion rate went up, but nobody bought the extra items. And it's really interesting because what we found when we did the research with those customers, because luckily when you've got small resorts, you can actually talk to them, right? And what we found was that when they saw, say, a spa package that they could add on, they thought, great, they've got a spa. That makes me decide on this resort, right? They don't necessarily book the spa package, but because they knew that we had a spa package, the conversion rate, and there was things like that where they converted. That sold me at the time. I'm making my mind up. I saw the spa package and thought, wow, the spa looks fantastic. I'll go there, click, and they converted, but they bought the spa treatment when they got to the resort. So that's really interesting with the luxury end, where we found that the price wasn't a problem.
I think you're bringing up a lot of things, Jackie, including I was reading some old articles on this, and where all this started was to do with some of the technology providers talking about add-ons and value add packages to bolt onto existing rooms, which I think differs from attribute-based pricing, but is along the same lines. And obviously that willingness to pay or not based on what those inclusions are. So
Yeah.
And I think one more thing to add up to that point, Jackie, what I teach in my classes in terms of packaging, you know, the old school packaging is how we put the things we want to sell with things we cannot sell and push to the customer, and customer absolutely hates that. Yeah. So giving them options, I think, is the best thing, right? You are still limiting the options. There's a set choice, but it is up to them to choose. So even in your example, I think is very interesting to say that they see the option, they choose, they make the selection because of that option, but they don't choose it at that time. And I have done some research in relation to this too. You know, the mindset when you do the booking versus the mindset as the trip becomes closer, and you psychologically put yourself in that trip mindset, and then boom, you are at the hotel and spotting comes back and you make the purchase. So even for that reason, presenting that option at that moment and putting that in, seeding that in customers' mind, I think is a very smart thing to do.
Yeah, and close to the time, you can go back and say, you know, we have limited space in the spa because it's a small resort. Do you want to take it, for example? Do you want to take the treatment? And, you know, that often they did it close to the time. You're right. Yeah. I think another place where I've seen it work well, and you probably have all seen it when you book a car. And you say, I want a medium-sized car, and it says, yeah, well, for $5 a day, I'll give you a large one. It's kind of that upgrading, the upselling thing works with it, rather than, or you might have I guess with attributes, you might have a baby seat, or you might have, I don't know, roof racks or something with a car like you. So things like that, more attribute-based things. But I don't know, I kind of feel like the big brands will bring out this sort of thing and get and the consumers will get used to seeing it like we have with airlines. So when we go on an airline, we all see, well, do you want a seat up the front? You can pay extra for that. Like there's always a bit of extra stuff in the list, in the burger menu, as you know, we call it. And so, you know, once people get used to it on hotel sites, then they'll want it. So, that's when we're all going to have to be ready, right?
I think, I mean, Brian made a point earlier, and say with Dr. Basak, I mean, it's to the segment. I mean, for the big brands, there is very much that economical young traveler who's looking at choosing, you know, to travel a lot cheaper for business or so forth. So for the bigger brands, there might be a very specific segment that will react really well to that type of thing. I'm just conscious of time. I really want to ask Nicholas, you know, from his perspective as that medium-sized brand, small to medium-sized brand, and relatively on the outside of attribute pricing, if any specific questions came to mind after seeing the video.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, it was great. Thanks again for this presentation, which I had seen in Singapore. So it's very interesting. For me, there's different ways. So I think I have more questions, or a lot of ideas that come out of it. I think the way I can see it and the added value I see is really about how can you potentially with that also refine your positioning. And I think that relates also to what Jackie says, right? I mean, I've got some hotels where, you know, sometimes, you know, you have, I don't know, you know, we have like a dive center, but how can we actually how can we get the customer to do that? And we started doing packages. And again, you know, some books, but then at least people know about the service. So I think and that's what I say, I still, yeah, as 5-star, I think it's going to be probably a matter of what customer kind of wants as a default. And that's going to probably change, you know, where the hotel is located, where you know, which source market is there. I think the only disadvantages, or the more of a question for me, is more also, and it's probably maybe a bit early to discuss, but obviously as we go there, yeah, there's a technology. I don't know if, you know, you've discussed with people like Guillet or Ideas, what do they think about it? What's, you know, because obviously hoteliers will need the technology to have that, whether it's, you know, PMS and RMS, but also then it's a matter of then, you know, complexity of the revenue management will increase, right? Right now we're talking about, you know, shortage of staff, trying to find the staff in terms of revenue management is getting more complicated. But I think there's a added value, and if done well, that could add value. And we're also talking about personalization, right? So I think it's also a lot of matter of, you know, what the customer wants. What do you have with the CRM? But then we can come into a very complex type of pricing. So for me, there's that. And then, you know, how the conversion rate on the website is going to be done, and how much technology can help. So I'm extremely interested. And maybe last comment, and we've seen, right, we're all saying it's low-cost airline, but ultimately, if we look at Europe, kind of low-cost airline kind of forced the traditional ones to kind of move into it. So would be interested to see if there's any studies or anything that was done in the airline industry or other industry, and what was the impact. But ultimately, willingness for the guests. I think at the end of the day, sometime, you know, and that's what I like, that, you know, there was some research from the guests, is at the end, it's all about what matters to the guests. So I think if done correctly, that could probably, you know, be positive. What's going to be complicated is really kind of adapt this. And I would agree also with what was said, right? For me, the key thing would be, ideally, we can differentiate versus the OTAs and try to get more direct booking, and hopefully that can help in terms of kind of creating, as Brian said, right? And we all have to go back and say, okay, we invest in something, you know, what's it? So it's all of those open questions. Sorry, maybe it's a lot. So that's about it. But the key thing for me, yeah, direct bookings. Hopefully, if we could see if that can help to drive that, I think that would probably help into the ROI analysis on that.
Thank you so much. That's really
Sorry.
fascinating.
I just
Sorry,
say one quick thing, like if I put my consumer hat on, especially if I'm going as a corporate traveler, if I stay at the same hotel all the time, there's certain things that I really want. Like, you know, when you go on the same flight all the time or the same plane, you tend to kind of reserve that same seat, don't you? I like to have, you know, that certain room that's in the corner, say, because I get a view of that or something. Or I like to have the one with the bath, not the shower, or whatever it is. I think those sort of things, especially when you're a regular travel, you know the hotel really well, so you know exactly what you want. I think it'll come in really nicely to that.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people like think about where the sun rises, you know, they want the sunshine coming in the morning and it not being blaring in their room in the afternoon. So there's a lot of aspects. I think, look, looping right back to where we started with Brian, I think at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to business case and looking at the business case and being able to, you know, translate that to owners in terms of investment, right? So at the moment, looking at the complexity and so forth. So I think, Dr. Basak, what would be interesting is more research on what the incremental revenue profitability is in terms of offsetting that investment. How quickly does that offset in terms of the additional revenue? And that's probably taking into account what Nicholas said, how many more direct bookings will that generate if you can have this system up and running? So to me, there's a lot more research.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also just to supplement one thing, you know, when I worked in the industry many years ago, I remember the time, you know, when we were implementing Opera PMS, and then it took so long to train everybody. Everybody was so frustrated, and then, you know, when the time of revenue management came and there was bar pricing, so it took so long to teach everybody these are bar levels, and this is, you know, the bar means this, and we have these add-ons. So that bar pricing is the super simplified and not optimized version of revenue pricing, and even implementation of that took forever, right? But that was a different era. Now I think, again, the new generation, not as customers, but as hotel industry professionals, I think they are more friendly with technology, with AI, with machine learning, and those things I think have to be part of pricing, even not attribute-based pricing, any type of pricing that we do today. I think pricing will only get more complex. I don't want to say complicated, but more complex in terms of, you know, how we define what the prices should be. But then, you know, this is very difficult then to implement throughout the hotel and tell everybody what this is and how this is done. To me, that is the most difficult part. Train people about what this is, how it is useful, how it will be implemented. So in terms of all that, in the big scheme of things, I think before we go to the profitability end of it, how to implement it properly itself is a very difficult question, an important question to answer. And if I can find somebody that implements this properly and convince them to work with me, then I can calculate, you know, what they do, how they do, and how it works. I will jump into that, you know, if I get opportunity.
But IXG is doing it now.
I actually have a question on this. You know, I'm sorry, I'm just going to take 10 seconds. With all the attribute-based pricing, what about the selling part? You know, how are people supposed to sell attributes? You know, I'm talking from a salesperson's perspective. You know, we are so used to selling services and, you know, not features so much. So does that necessarily, how does it translate?
So that's a very good question. So I think the answer to that question is we are not going to price everything that is priceable, right? Yeah. So you are going to price things that represent value to the customer. For example, if you price basic internet, people wouldn't like it, right? That would have negative reaction. But in a resort, if you are pricing the view, if you are pricing the room size, is different, right? That has value attached to it. Like again, for example, in Hong Kong, not hotels, but apartment rents are so high with harbor view. I personally don't value that. I want the space, but I don't pay for the view, right?
Yeah.
So this is what you sell. You sell the benefit, you sell the value, you don't sell the future. Future itself doesn't have value, and all those futures, all the attributes you have shouldn't be priced and shouldn't be sold. That's why that process is so important. When you have options that you know your customers would value, majority of your customers would value, I think from a sales point of view, it is easier to try to sell them versus meaningless things, right? For example, you can sell things like the higher floor, away from the elevator, better coffee machine, but maybe they are not valued. So this decision should be made very carefully.
That's right.
Really
Okay,
interesting topic.
Thank you.
I think I did say before the call,
Insightful.
I did say before the call that we would burn through the 25-minute Q&A session, which we have. It's just past 1 o'clock. Dr. Basak, I just want to thank you on behalf of HSMAI. I mean, your presentations are always so clean and so insightful and objective. It's really nice to sit through and see your slides and the information they contain. And a special thank you to Brian Bailey from Minor Hotels. Thank you for joining, and Nicholas Duran from S Hotels and Resorts. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, Jackie and Sonia. So unfortunately, we did have a few more slides to go through, but we've used our time and everyone needs to get back and finish their lunch or get back to work. So thank you all for joining our last ROC at Work session. And the next ones will be the masterclasses. So keep an eye out and visit our website for any updates about upcoming events. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.